7, 6, 5,
I was
4.
like, who's gonna make the behind the scenes racket like normal?
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us for this rare Monday live stream. But, you know, uh, Abby told me last week, she said, I have this friend who owns an independent bookstore. And, we're literally smack dab in the middle of hashtag indie summer. And, you know, how awesome would it be to get a proprietor of an indie bookstore to kind of show us, to shine a light on the other side of the industry. As indie authors, uh, we are used to uh, playing the game with Amazon because the 800-pound gorilla. If you're going to sell ebooks, Amazon is probably the easiest way the entry to that market. Or if you're traditionally published, you're used to one, playing the Amazon game, but also trying to get placed in some of the big bookstore chains. Well, in both sides of this equation, the thing that is overlooked are indie bookstores. And up until, I don't know, 20 years ago, um, indie bookstores were the heartbeat of the publishing industry. The mom and pop owned bookstore, that was owned by people that you knew and who understood the culture that their bookstore was in, and the culture of readers, and you got a kind of a different flavor. If you went to a bookstore in South Mississippi where I am, or in Central Florida where Abby is, or maybe you're in Canada where Doug is, you would get a little different flair, depending on, where you were, and you would get great local authors, and you would get, things that particular culture of people were really vibing on at the time. And now when you go into a Barnes and Noble or Books a Million, where I live, if you go into a Books a Million in Meridian, where I am, or in Birmingham, which is about 2 hours away, you're going to walk in those front doors, and you're going to feel like you're in the exact same store. It's almost identical, and there's no local flair or flavor. And if you want to find out about writers from that area, good luck. They might have one little shelf, and it's curated by someone 3 states away and what they think is going on. Anyway, I say all that to say, Abby's friend, Terri LeBlanc from Swamp Fox Bookstore, my favorite name of a bookstore, by the way, Swamp Fox, I love that, is joining us today to talk about indie bookstores. And what better place to have that than in the smack dab in the middle of hashtag indie summer. Welcome, Terri.
Hi.
So a big lead in, and Terri gives the hi.
Right. So Abby, fill us in. How do you know Terri, and
so
tell us
Terri
how this
and I met
relationship got started?
Years ago, both working behind the scenes at Author Accelerator. And Terri is like she was the automations wizard. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know what a Zap was until Terri filled me in. And so you were really great at working with the procedures and the processes for the company kind of behind the scenes. But you were also great at working with all the writers that were coming in, wanting to be paired with the coaches. You and I ran all the coffee talks together. So Terri and I feel like we're back in the game, the two of us.
Yeah.
Together on Zoom, talking to writers.
We're lucky enough that two of the folks that attended our coffee talks way back in the day actually had books published this year traditionally. So
that's right. And actually recently, you were interviewing Lydia Hillier, and I was like, oh, that's when I was like, we got to get Terri on, because this is perfect. But you've always been such a champion of writers. I mean, you're a book lover and a book consumer yourself. You're a champion of writers. And I mean, running a bookstore, man, bring readers and writers together. That's just like your superpower. And when I went to Swamp Fox Bookstore's website, which we should put a link to the bookstore here in like the show notes of the podcast, because you have a whole page dedicated to resources for writers and how to get writers into indie bookstores. And I think that's really what our audience is probably clamoring to hear about today, is how can we leverage an independent bookstore to get our books into the hands of the right people?
Yeah. So like we mentioned a few minutes ago, we kind of think in these two worlds: the big corporate bookstore, Amazon, and if we have an indie bookstore in our town or somewhere that we can communicate with, how do you do
it?
Yeah,
how do you do it?
Like,
how do you start
someone
it?
approaches you, what do you like? How do you start that relationship with them? Do you want to sample the book first, and like, what can people expect when they approach a bookstore?
And the very frustrating thing that I'm going to say, the thing I'm going to say is probably going to be very frustrating. Every independent bookstore is different. And that's the beauty of independent bookstores.
Yeah,
every single one is going to have a different way that they handle independently published authors or small press authors, the people that they aren't getting through the traditional, through the traditional means.
Right.
So always have to keep that first and foremost in your mind, is that the way I deal with indie and small press authors is not going to be the same way that the bookstore that is 2 blocks away from me is going to deal with them. So it's very important to do research first on the stores that you might think would be good matches, or those that are in your neighborhood. Many of us, like our store, have a link on our website with very detailed information about how we can help you. And we also provide other resources to help you sort of maybe craft that introductory message. I can tell you most independent bookstores don't want you to just wander in off the street with your stack of books and expect you to expect to engage with somebody in the store. Most of the stores may be staffed by 1 or 2 people. There might be in a larger store, you would be possibly dealing with a person that deals specifically in buying. There's no guarantee that they would be in the store when you stop by. So keep that in mind. If you do want to reach out and interact, the first thing is look at that website, see what their parameters are, see if there's guidelines for you there already. And then you aren't starting from square one or doing a cold email or cold letter to the bookstore.
Yeah, I know the one local indie bookstore that we have down here. So we're kind of close to Miami. We're in South Florida. The Readery only deals with like children's diverse voices. So they're super specialty, super niche. And you walk in and it's staffed by all the high school kids from the arts school that's across the street. And so if you
they aren't going to stock a romance book.
Yep. You got like a 17-year-old kid you're talking to. You're not even talking to the right person who'll buy the book. And so that's good advice to start with the website and dig in and see what information you can get.
Social media is a good place to start too, to see what types of books they're promoting, what types of books they're talking about too. I think the biggest mistake, I think there's probably 2 big mistakes that sometimes authors make when they do a pitch to an indie bookstore. Number one, they mention Amazon, which is a behemoth that is killing us and killing all small businesses in America. So you never want to mention Amazon. My book's available on Amazon. You can order it from Amazon to an indie bookseller. That's the number one thing that's going to probably get your email deleted, right? And pitching. Go ahead.
And you can buy salt shakers on Amazon. Just because you can buy it on Amazon doesn't, like, that's not something to lead with.
Yeah. And the number one thing, or the number 2 thing, would be pitching to a store that's not a good fit for your book. So if you're pitching a romance book to a children's store, or pitching a literary, like a very traditional literary fiction book to a romance bookstore, you have to know your audience when you're going in. You're marketing yourself. You want to put your best foot forward. And don't think that we don't talk to each other as indie booksellers, because we do. So we have a bad interaction with you or a really weird interaction, we're probably going to let other booksellers know this was kind of a weird situation or that kind of thing too. So, not to scare anybody about reaching out to us, but just make sure that you're putting your best foot forward when you do decide to reach out.
So it's just like pitching agents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where the whole idea is that you're looking for a business relationship and you are presenting yourself professionally. So you don't want to make your query letter sound defensive or needy or, full of ego or any of those things. Those same principles are going to apply here when you reach out to the booksellers, because like we were saying before we started this call, you have to start thinking about your book as a business.
Yes. And that's going to be a decision that the bookstore is making as well when they are considering carrying your book or possibly doing an event for with you, if that is something that's on the table, is that they, just like you as an author, you put time and effort into putting this book out there, and now you're ready to let it go and be out in the world. So you have to approach it from a business standpoint. We're also approaching it from a business standpoint of, do we think this book will sell? Is it similar to any other books that we have on our shelves that we know our customers like? If we're going to do an event, do we think people will attend the event? Because I think the number one thing that happens to us when we do an event with an author that's maybe not as well known is that we do all the heavy lifting on the promoting and we see nothing coming from the other side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So speaking of pitching bookstores, what is like the favorite pitch that you've ever gotten from an author? Like, did they ever do anything that was out of the ordinary that made them stand out? Or are most pitches just, this is my book, this is the jacket copy? Like,
that's what most of them are. 99% of the time, that's what they are. Okay. There's a handful of times. The ones that usually catch my eye is if the author has a connection to the area. I did a whole string with an author that was being published by a small press, I think in California, and they were coming back to this area, and the timing just wasn't going to work out. And the more I talked to the publicist about it, it just wasn't a good fit for us. It was more of a literary title, and we really are more of that mid-list, stuff, mid-list authors that you're going to find that it's not going to be a shelf trophy, like, a classic just sitting on my shelf, whether I'm going to read it or not kind of thing. So, but we, when we see those things, when we see that somebody has a connection to the area, or maybe they've shopped at the store, they've had conversations with us, they've engaged with us on social media. Those are all things that can help in terms of us being familiar with you as an author when it hits our inbox. And also having a good internet presence, if that's where your presence is, because that's how we're going to learn more, and we'll send people that way too. And so we can go out to your social media or your website and see how you're promoting yourself, how you're promoting your events as well. Mm-hmm. You don't have to do it all. As I tell people, I know Abby's probably heard that we say this a million times. You don't have to do it all. You don't have to do all the social media platforms. You don't have to, but you have to be good at one of them so that we can see that you have that and you're going to, promote our store or promote us. The one thing that we can do, because we do have limited shelf space and and a limited budget to buy books and handle those things, is we will always be happy if somebody is on Ingram to be able to list their book on our website and then link back to us. And I can tell you the handful of authors that have actually linked back to us or done a call out to us on social media after they find out their book is linked on our site, I get 1 to 2 orders from those books when that happens. The authors that do absolutely nothing, we sell absolutely none of those books, which means if I had those on my shelves, I more than likely would be selling absolutely none of those books on my shelf because nobody's doing anything to promote people coming into my store to pick them up.
So dig into that for just a minute, so people sort of understand if they're new to the distribution piece of this. You aren't talking about selling an ebook off your website. You're talking about more of Ingram Sparks, like print on demand, where they can order from you. Mm-hmm. Ingram Spark then distributes it for them, but you essentially get credited for the sale.
Yep. Yep. We would. So the book is available to order essentially. And if it was somebody local coming to the store, we'd order it in, and Ingram Spark would send it directly to us. We can ship anywhere in the United States. So somebody in California could buy your book, and we would ship it. We'd have.
I've bought books from you before.
What?
I've bought books from you before. They come across the country. They
do. And if people aren't aware, bookshop.org now does have ebooks. So there are a handful, depending on how you have ebooks set up. And I know that for them, that is a new piece of their business that just started in January. And there's, they've been very active at working things out and trying to figure out how it all works, and being able to get more authors in that environment as well. That there are some ebooks now that are pushed out by Ingram, because they have their own ebook arm of the business as well, that are available on Bookshop. So there is some cases where you can get the ebook from us via Bookshop, essentially, is what it ends up being.
So it looks like B has a question that's sort of along these lines, where she said, do you print them, or does the author need to have them printed to send in after submitting the form? And so the Ingram Spark piece, do you know, would that be the most common distributor that most people are using?
Yes, most independent bookstores work directly with Ingram for distributing, for ordering wholesale.
Okay.
You might run into some, like I said, you need to do your research, right? There are some, I follow a lot of bookstores on social media, but I know there's a few of them that popped up that they're only dealing with indie authors. That's their goal. So they're actually doing wholesale agreements directly with the authors for that and bringing their books into their store. Other bookstores will do consignment, but usually when they're doing consignment, it's something very, very local. Like they have very narrow parameters. Like you have to be from the area, that kind of thing. So every bookstore will handle it differently from that standpoint.
So I was actually going to ask you about ebooks, and I'm glad that you kind of broached that subject already. So we all know that when Amazon launched the Kindle, they launched Kindle Direct Publishing as an arm of that, as a way for them to generate a lot of content to move their Kindles, obviously. And then it became, this whole thing. So how does that work from the bookstores side? Because you're selling product that you don't have to stock, but are customers still coming to you like for personal recommendations?
Oh, yes.
Like what is the bookstore's role? Because I do think that having a person that you can lean on, who you trust, that their taste, and that there's nothing like a librarian or a person at a bookstore who's like, hey, come here, I've got something for you, and they turn you on to something.
My sister refers to me as her dealer. I have a lot of people.
I was
do that.
I was trying to get at that language without using that language. So thank you that you hit on that exactly.
Yeah. And I think this is the case for all small businesses, right? When you walk into that local business where the person that is standing on that sales floor behind the counter has a connection to the community and they know you by name, you're always going to have a better experience. It's not going to be some random algorithm thinking you're going to like a book. And I think there is something about that experience in a bookstore or the local stationery store or the locally owned restaurant that's very different than going to a larger establishment. And so that's why people are still support small businesses like indie bookstores, is because when you walk in the door, if you've been in the door before and it might take me a couple times, but I'm at least going to recognize your face. I'll be like, you've been in before. Remind me of your name. And there are points in time now where when we are doing buying or we get advanced reader copies in from all the different sources we get those in from, we'll be like, oh, I know that Abby will like this book, and we'll set it aside for them, or purchase because we know, this particular book is being comped to Stephen King, that this customer that always buys the latest Stephen King may enjoy this book. And that's one way you get why every independent bookstore is different, because every independent bookstore has different customers. And they're trying to hone their inventory to be as a good turnover as possible, because that's how we keep the doors open. That's how we keep buying books, is we have to sell the books that are on the shelves.
Right.
Yeah.
Understood.
So speaking of having the books on the shelf, let's talk to everybody about the fact that chances are probably slim that as an indie author, your books are going to be on the shelf. Why is that, Terri?
Part of it is just the way the industry, it really comes down to the industry. A lot of times when you're online and you're on social media, you're going to see an us versus them, kind of situation. And I think that is unfortunate, because there are a lot of things we can do together. And there has been, depending on which corner of the internet you're in, you're going to find some people that are trying to work together. Like, how can we find the best case scenario for both groups, right? Because we are both being smashed by the behemoths out there. It's not good that all of our ebooks, or the majority of our ebooks, are only available through Amazon, because you can't get them off your device, right? Mm-hmm. If Amazon were, suddenly decide to shut down tomorrow, if Jeff Bezos decides he has enough money, you lose your Audible, you lose, all your ebooks, right? That's not a good situation for anyone. And so we're all backed in a corner because of a large corporation. So we have to find ways to work together and figure it out. So the messaging I've been seeing online lately, from the people that I follow, is probably why I continue to follow them, is, if you need a physical book or an audiobook, or you can get the ebook on bookshop.org, do that, because you're supporting local businesses when you do that. If the book is available on Amazon, check to see if the author has them available on their own website, because more than likely, if they are getting them and have a stock themselves and shipping them out themselves, they're probably making a higher margin if you're buying the book directly from them on their website. So almost do window shopping, right, on the larger corporation websites, and then see where else you can go to get it, because everybody wins in the end and probably makes a tiny bit of more money when you do it that way.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about bookstores, though, and there's this logistical piece where, again, we're kind of coming down to business. When looking at some of these distribution platforms, I've noticed that there's like a checkbox or a slider box that says, yes, I will accept returns, or no, I won't.
Yeah.
And so you, as the author, if you don't accept returns, isn't that a reason why you're not getting into?
It can be. It can be.
It's expensive, right? You then, as the author, have to pay the shipping to get the books back, which is actually the expensive part, from what I understand.
Yeah. And if you're doing returns through Ingram, because you've got a middleman in there, for many authors, it becomes a losing battle. And that's why a lot of authors, I understand why they don't want to have their books returnable on Ingram. Like, I totally get it. Like, I've seen a few different people like put those numbers together. Like, well, yeah, that does really suck for you, right?
Yeah.
And so, that's the frustrating part, because Ingram in itself is a monopoly as well, because they are the only wholesale distributor in the nation. So once again, we're back in a corner, right?
I bring it up because I think those are the things that I'm starting to discover. The further and further I get into the publishing piece, these are the business decisions that you have to make. So as much as I would love to see my book on a bookstore shelf, I'm understanding now it's not like, don't get butt hurt, Abby, that your book is not on the shelf. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with you or your book. It comes down to money. And do I want to accept that risk?
Yeah.
Of having to pocket and eat the shipping costs, having to have books returned to me as the author? Then what am I going to do with those books? Is my garage big enough? It's not.
And the other thing, one of the things most people don't understand, I've seen this happen on online a lot, where they're like, well, Amazon's selling the hardcover for $10, but at retail, the mark price on the book is $25 or $30. They're selling it as a loss leader. They're not making any money on that book. the only thing I have in my store is books and a handful of stickers and puzzles. And I have to sell it at that price if I'm going to make any money on it at all. And even then I'm getting like between 46 and 50%. If I'm lucky, I'm getting 50%.
Yeah.
If I'm not lucky, I mean, on average, it's between 40 and 46% is what we're paying for a book to be on for our shelf. So the margins in the book selling community are very, very slim because we're one of the few industries where the price is printed on everything in the store.
You can't change it if you wanted to.
No. Whereas, you walk into, the local pet, locally owned pet store, the local stationery shop, or the local clothing store, they're putting those prices on there. Yeah. They get to decide what that margin is. And booksellers don't get that choice.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, because we're talking about margins. I think we've all been in some of the big box bookstores. And I've mentioned a couple of the big players in the past, but our local big box bookstore, you walk in and there immediately to your right is a giant coffee shop when you walk in. And then all around the coffee shop are bookish gifts. There are scarves with quotes from books printed on it, or there's some stationery
with books.
There's lots of book adjacent stuff.
There is.
And then as you get back toward the like kids section, there are toys, and granted, most of them are like educational type toys and stuff, but they're book adjacent at best. And and as I've kind of witnessed this trend over the last several years, is that the actual books, the things with words printed in the middle, is steadily shrinking, and the book adjacent stuff is getting bigger and bigger.
The margins are better,
and that's obviously a discussion about margins, right? Yes. Because you can, those things don't have the prices stamped right on the cover like books do. So exactly. So is that a trend that you guys in the indie bookstore space are like?
It depends on the store. It depends on what their philosophy is. I will say, when we started our store 5 years ago, we had a very small footprint. We only had 180 square feet is what we started with. So 99% of what we had in the store was books. So we had very, very little room, like level space, to put anything else. We moved at the beginning of January 2024, and we've certainly have more square footage now, but finding the stuff, trying to find what's going to sell in that area too can be difficult, because when a book doesn't sell from most of the places we get books from, we can mail them back and get credit to buy more books. It's bonus. Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
So it's not, so yes, we have to pay the shipping back, and shipping is getting more and more expensive, but we have a way to sort of make ends meet, right, by doing the returns. Whereas that may not necessarily be the case with some of what we would call sidelines. So the stickers and the games and the puzzles. So we have to make an educated guess on that stuff. And sometimes you can find, we are lucky. Based on my business partner and I, we grew up in the 90s, and we were of the late 80s and early 90s. We were products of the Book It generation, and the bookstore just happens to be across the street from Pizza Hut. So we capitalize anything we can find with the Book It, related to Book It. We've got it on our shelves, and it sells like hotcakes. Other stores, one of the other bookstores here in town, they have a bookstore cat. So Frank curates cat related things, themed things, usually black cat things, because he's a black cat. And so every bookstore, what's kind of fun is every bookstore has its own, it might have its own little thing like that. Right.
And that's again, the ability of the local bookstore to kind of take the pulse of what's going on in that community and meet a specific need. Yeah. And you're just not going to get that from the big chain stores.
And when it comes to looking at, what's going on in your own backyard too, you're going to find that the local businesses are the ones that are going to be donating to, fund the local Little League team or the POM team or whatever it is. So your money, when you do spend it locally, does stay in the area and goes back within the community. So 5 years ago, we opened in July, and then less than 3 weeks later, there was a devastating natural disaster here, and we lost the library. The building was a complete and utter loss. A majority of one section of the library, the entire collection was a loss. Oh. And so within a month of us opening, we were fundraising for the library. Yeah. And we hadn't even been open for a month. So it's really neat to see how small businesses connect. And when we do events now, and we do them because our square footage at our store still isn't huge. When we do events, a lot of times we will host them at the library, and 10% of all our sales that we conduct at the library go back to the library because they let us use that space for free.
Nice.
So speaking of events, let's talk about author events for just a minute, because
that's what I was going to go to next.
I was trying to get over there. Yeah.
We're on the same wavelength.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Because you do a lot of events, not just in person, but also online.
Yeah, we did more virtual events in the pandemic and in the early days post-pandemic. It isn't as frequent anymore, but we've gotten a couple. Counting Lydia's, we'll have 3 so far this year. Author events are one of my favorite things to do, and it's probably just because I've had great experience at author events. And some of them are authors pitching directly to us. And some of them are ones we get directly from working with publishers. And we've done unusual events. I think that's the key thing, the cool thing about indie bookstores is everybody can do unique things. I met one of the booksellers that has a bookstore north of us in northern Iowa yesterday for the first time. And she did a pre-order campaign for a book recently that had a themed yarn. There's a yarn shop in her town, and they did some.
Well, you just woke
and it's sold like hotcakes, right? And I attended an event at the romance bookstore in town yesterday. That's 2 blocks away from us, and Jen was talking all about upcoming titles, and she called it "Spill the Tea." So she had a tea vendor come in and give tea samples, and you could buy tea. We do events with a woman that does cooking demonstrations. So we bring in cookbooks that fit the theme. And she usually cooks a recipe from one of them. So you can get creative when you're doing events too. It doesn't have to be your traditional, Q&A or getting up and reading from your work. Mm-hmm. Think of something creative, something that might be more interactive. I know from experience, talking in front of people is really hard. And I know a lot of writers are introverts, so getting up and talking or being in conversation with somebody might be a little bit intimidating. So is there something in your book or some unique aspect you have that you might be able to create a really cool event? We had a local children's author reach out to us this spring, and she wanted to do an event. And I was like, I love doing children's events, but they've in the past been really poorly attended for us. I'm like, are there other authors that children's authors that we could bring together and sort of do an author meet and greet kind of event with some activities? Like every author could have a different activity because a lot of authors that are children's books authors, picture book authors, they have coloring sheets or some kind of hands-on activity, right? Because many of them will go into schools or museums and that kind of thing. And so we had 6 children's authors and illustrators from Iowa. It was sort of a book fair situation. They each had a table. So they got to interact one-on-one with the kids, which is a lot less intimidating for the kids too, because they're just it's one-on-one with a complete stranger versus a large group. They each had a different activity, whether it was a coloring sheet or some kind of craft activity. And then over in one corner, we did story time throughout the morning. So look at who else is in your neighborhood or in your area that that maybe you could do an event that is a panel event that gives people that you all can support each other, right? And everybody kind of gets that lift, and you aren't carrying that burden of promoting that event and worrying that nobody's going to come.
You're going to laugh when I tell you this, because every one of my books has an animal in it.
Yes.
And I have a couple of books that I've written that connect directly back to the local wildlife sanctuary and some of their education animals. I even named the animals in the story after the actual animals at the wildlife sanctuary with the intent that I could get them to coordinate with me and bring these animals to events. Well, the book that's going to be published this year did not have a wildlife sanctuary connection. And so I was like, what's going to be my animal connection to take? Well, the crux of the book, the problem, it's almost like an eco mystery because it gets solved by making a compost machine. So I started writing this nonfiction companion to go hand in hand with all these composting activities. And I thought, I'm gonna get a bunch of those worms that compost, and I'm gonna set up one of those big worm bins. Wouldn't that be fun to bring with me to events to show kids, like, these are the worms? And Terry, they all decided to have a jailbreak one night. And we escaped, and we're all over my house. And I had to collect dead worms in the morning before the children woke up and freaked out. And I was like, maybe worms aren't the best idea. But
yeah, we've leveraged when we've done events. We have one local author, or we have a local author that's published by Harper, and she's like one of our best-selling authors. She's gonna have 11 books by the end of this year. So like she's been around for a long time. So a lot of times if we have a new suspense thriller author that wants to come visit us, we'll be like, can you do an event together? Because then we're introducing
show. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's that too. We have, I don't know if she still writes book. We had an author a while ago that had pet skunks. So she wrote children's books about her pet skunks, and she would bring the pet skunks.
Oh, I love that. Stinky.
They were dissented. So yeah.
Oh, even then I think they still have a ode.
They're very intelligent creatures, I've learned. So, but there's all kinds of different things. We did an event last year that was a cat adoption event. You do a kitten story time, that kind of thing. Yeah, there's so many different ways. It doesn't have to be the traditional author event, right? When you pitch at trying to do an event.
So I feel like the more creative you get, like sometimes that's part of the job. I mean, if you're like me, who, by the way, used to teach high school and plan prom, and every year that was like, what's the theme going to be? How can I decorate? Like, how can I make this a big blowout? Was always like, that was kind of my jam. But when I lived up in New England, I was not far from, so you know Peter Reynolds, the children's author?
Yes.
And he owns a bookshop. And I can't think of the name of the bookshop. But I was at one of the SCBWI conferences up there, and his partner, who might have been his sister-in-law, I don't know. But she was there at the event, and she was talking about some of the wacky, like, author events that they do where, like, they come and, like, the vans are decorated and it, everything shows up and it's all themed and it's all, I'm like, man, that, like, if I could just spend my life doing that would be amazing.
The other thing is, don't go outside your comfort zone either. Like,
true.
A lot of these things sound really cool, but then, like, oh my gosh, I think about when we first started, it seemed like we tried to, like, blow it out with every event, and that gets exhausting too, right? So keep it simple, and if that's more your jam, and that's fine too. Just be ready to pitch that way.
You gotta hustle it.
Yeah.
So what are some other, if there was like one secret that you wish all indie authors sort of knew, what would you like divulge to them? Like,
do your research on the bookstores. I think the biggest thing, I have a group of booksellers that I chat with quite frequently. And the number one thing I think that annoys all of us is when we just get a cold pitch that's not personalized, has nothing about our store. It seems to know nothing about us in the message. Like, you just went down a list. And I think the approach that we learned at Author Accelerator, when you're talking about querying agents, Abby, kind of might fit with this, is that, pick a core group and, do it in batches so that you break it up, as an author, so that you can hone those messages to them, and somehow show them that you are aware of their store somehow, whether it's following them and, interacting with them and building that connection. If it's local shopping and attending events, you won't even have to necessarily buy something, right? you're just regularly attending events, they're showing your support for them. That is the best way to build community. And like, so even though we may not carry very many indie or small press authors on our shelves, it's not that we don't want to support that community. So what we found works best for our small team, because it's me and like my business partner that works in 9 to 5 and has 2 kids, is that we can list you on our website, and hopefully we'll get to the point where maybe we can do some more events with small press and indie authors. So it's like we're building a mailing list. And when we get to that point in our business, or there's a hole in our schedule where we think, oh, so-and-so emailed us and it was a really great event, or a really great idea. And that happened to me when I was doing my fall events. We had a local photographer reach out to us. He has a book about Route 66 coming out. We had worked with another author a year ago, and I knew from following her on social media that she and her husband took a trip down Route 66. So I said, hey, would you come be in conversation with this photographer about Route 66?
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it doesn't even have to be really elaborate, like you said, just show up, just attend. So I've noticed, so another local kind of South Florida author, Carl Hyacin, right? He, so he did all the cool, like kids, like there's sort of an eco connection in all of his books as well. Now his adult books are hilarious and like total Florida man sort of thing. But he lives in Vero Beach, which is about an hour north of us. And my in-laws live in Vero Beach as well. And they have a nice big bookstore in Vero. And I notice on his social media, he will oftentimes just post a picture that says having coffee at, and the name of the bookstore. And there's just a picture of him with you don't even see him. You just see his cup of coffee and you see all the books behind him in the background. And and that's it. That's what he does. And he tags the bookstore and ta-da.
Yep.
It's just a nice way. If you expect a bookstore to help you, you should also help the bookstore. It's the whole indies helping indies piece.
Yes.
You can't see Hank if you're listening to the podcast, but he's like, preach it, sister. Stick together.
Yeah.
Can I ask a super genre specific question?
You can. I don't know if I'll be able to answer. We'll do my best.
Well, I feel like you might be one of the better people to ask just because you're in the position that you're in. So we were talking about this the other day about middle grade and kid lit. And kid lit, they don't sell many ebooks though. I mean, wouldn't you say that if you're buying books for kids, print is still king?
It is. One of the things they are noticing, and I don't know if there's been any studies about this, but I will tell you it's been a discussion in the book selling world for at least a few years, at least post-pandemic, is that chapter books, the traditional kind of chapter books that you see that 8 to 13 age range you get into. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
the sales seem to be shrinking a little bit in those areas, in that area.
Don't tell me that, because that's what I'm working on next.
I know. And the other thing, what I noticed too, and I don't know if it's because we're located in the Midwest, there is maybe not as much disposable income, is that selling hardcovers is getting more difficult too.
Interesting.
But graphic novels sell really well. Yeah. And the teachers and the things I've heard is that it could be an attention span thing, right?
Oh, 100%. I always thought when graphic novels first really kind of hit the scene, for reluctant readers, they were brilliant because the kids turn the pages very quickly too. So there's a confidence building, I think, that happens for kids, that they can pick up a book and they can finish that book. And once they finish one, I mean, I always felt like, speaking of books as drugs, like that hooks you. I mean, that you're like, great, I want another one. Give me another book. And graphic novels, I think, have been brilliant for that. But I think what we hope is that then the readers want to move on to something more advanced eventually. And so, I didn't think about how that might affect chapter books, because chapter books are also highly illustrated most of the time.
They can be, yeah. It's that bridge when you get out of the highly illustrated ones and get into the more the traditional ones where we're kind of seeing a lull in sales there for some stores.
Yeah.
And it could all be where our store's area expertise is. I personally don't have any children, so I rely on talking to the parents and the teachers that come in our store about what are the kids doing? What are they reading? Right.
Well,
I don't have any people close to me that are in that.
Ask the librarian every time I go to the middle school, right? So my youngest daughter is in middle school, and the librarian, I love it. I get so tickled because she'll call me or text me, right? And I'm like, you would think it was like some freaking superstar actor the way I react when the middle school librarian like reaches out via text message to me. I'm like, oh, Mrs. Boutte requires my attention. And I will like drop everything. And her name is Mrs. Boutte, which is both adorable and unfortunate for being in middle school. Boutte. And anyway, I love her. And where was I even going with this? Oh, I always ask her, what's flying off the shelves right now, Mrs. Boutte? And it's always the same answer. Are you ready for this?
What is it?
Diary of a Wimpy Kid.
Yeah, and Dog Man.
Just Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So I'm like, okay, that's what I got to compete with.
Right. And I think that what makes me so sad is when an adult poo-poos graphic novels. I don't care what the kids read. I'm just excited that they're reading. Reading is reading, and there's so much comprehension too. I have tried graphic novels and I've tried comics. My brain doesn't work to do the pictures and the words together like that. It just doesn't. So I'm really like, my nieces and nephews will sit down and will just like crank through those graphic novels, and they get it. They understand what's going on. And my brain just doesn't work that way. And I admire them. And I'm just like, whatever you're reading, I don't care. Like, I'm glad you're reading.
What my mom always said, she'd say to my brother, my younger brother, I don't care if it's a cereal box or a Playboy. Will you just pick something up and read it?
For the articles.
For the articles.
It's for the articles, right? Look, as someone who has struggled with dyslexia all my life, graphic novels, comic books were my entry to reading.
Yeah.
Hands down. Superman and Justice League comic books when I was 7 and 8 years old, those saved my life, and they're the reason I'm a writer today. So, don't come at me talking bad about comic books. I will fight you, literally. But one thing, Terri, that I wanted to ask you about, we've mentioned it a couple of times. You mentioned that there's a specialty romance store a couple blocks from you, and we talked about some specialty stores here and there, but when you have kind of come up through your only exposure is the big box retail stores. Maybe you're in a smaller town and you just have that, and you walk in and science fiction and fantasy are to your left and romance is all the way to the right. And you've got some mystery and thrillers back here, and it's just kind of one place. What role, I mean, it's kind of self-explanatory, but what role do specialty bookstores serve? And as an author, if I'm a romance author, for example, and you have a romance bookstore a couple blocks from you, first, what purpose do those specialty bookstores serve? And if I'm that kind of author, how would I make a pitch to them that I might be a good fit, either for a signing event or to have my books placed on the shelf or on your website, or like how would you go about interacting with them?
Yeah. For me, it takes some pressure off me. I'm not a huge romance reader. And romance readers are ravenous readers. Like,
I was going to say ravenous.
If there's any one genre keeping the publishing industry afloat, it's those romance readers.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Because there's something about those books and the way they are published that are just so consumable, the way maybe other genres aren't.
Sure.
And so it takes some pressure off for me because I'm not a romance reader. And so when there are a handful of romance authors I know and I enjoy, and I might read one or two a year, and I'll carry those if I enjoy those, but somebody's coming in looking for something with more spice in it, or a very specific author, I'm like, go talk to Jen down the street, right? She and I are great friends. We support each other. She does the same thing. She has people coming in looking for remarkably bright creatures, not a romance novel. So she'll call me or send me a message on Facebook. Hey, do you have remarkably bright creatures? I'm like, yep, send them down. So we like send each other back and forth, which is great. And it's not that I wouldn't do an event with a romance author, but I might recommend that they talk to Jen first, because I know that her audience, the people that follow, the majority of people that follow her certainly have crossover. Those are going to be that's going to be a better fit for the author than perhaps the people coming to my store. We have done joint events too. So if you can find a way to bring both of us together and do an event, Jen and I have co-hosted events together, because there's some authors that we are both big fans of. We know too, if we partner together, there might be a bigger possibility that a publicist would actually say yes to sending someone to the middle of Iowa, the middle of the country where it's a little bit more expensive to get to. So that's another thing. Like if you are a genre author and you're pitching to a traditional store or maybe a store that is not your genre, is there a way for you to pitch an event that might be able to appeal to that bookstore, bring in other authors or other people within the community that might help draw in that crowd, right?
Is there a place where writers can go to find a list of all like the indie bookstores in their state?
Great question.
That is a good question. So there's probably a few different resources. The American Booksellers Association, any bookstore that is a member there, they have a membership list there. There's different regions of bookstores in the United States. So for example, our store belongs to the Midwest Independent Booksellers Association. The next one over for us is the Great Lakes Independent Booksellers Association. They all have websites, and many of them have a searchable directory. And so there's also a website called indiebound.org, which has a searchable directory on it as well, which is connected to the American Booksellers Association. I highly recommend that one to most folks that are wanting to know more about how the larger corporations affect the business or just affect our communities in general. The ABA has done a lot of research over the last, I don't know how many years, about the effects of Amazon on small businesses. And they have some pretty good facts and figures out there in terms of, how much, on average, like how much tax dollars stay in your community when you shop local, and, how, that type of stuff. And they do a good job of marketing. And if it wasn't for and I know that independent authors also have their own associations as well. If it weren't for organizations like professional organizations like that, lobbying for us in Congress, we may not be here anymore, because they're constantly going to bat for us, not only on a national level when it comes to like credit card fees and other things related to small businesses, but on the local level for those of us fighting against book banning and book challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So those are some resources there. Bookshop.org has a searchable index as well there. So that's a great resource. If your book is listed on bookshop.org, become a bookshop.org affiliate. Believe it or not, their affiliate fees are higher than Amazon's.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And what I tell people too, Amazon doesn't need your advertising. Like, people know Amazon. So when you are listing a book, if it is available in other places, list all those other places first, or when you're linking on social media, list those alternate places, because everybody knows to go to Amazon. It's one of the simple things you can do, right? Yeah. If your books are only available on Amazon, that's fine, right? That's the ecosystem that works for you, and I get that.
Yeah.
But if your books are available, in a broader context, consider linking to those alternate sites ahead of the larger corporations. A couple of years ago, had the opportunity, just by chance, a convention I went to, I actually got to talk to somebody that worked at the corporate level at Barnes & Noble. Well, Barnes & Noble, and Books A Million are very large corporations, is that if we didn't have because of the number of independent bookstores has shrunk dramatically since Amazon came on the scene. If we didn't have a corporation like Barnes & Noble or Books a Million buying books in the quantities they do, the publishing industry would likely be very much smaller or collapse.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So while there is not, big corporations is horrible, at the same time, the way the publishing industry works, we need that.
Yeah.
So feel okay if you buy from Barnes & Noble if you don't have a local place really close to you.
Well, but investigate too. I tell people, I'm in Iowa. I've shipped all over the country.
Yeah.
So we ship nationwide. I've shipped, and we don't do it much anymore, but I've shipped to the UK and Canada. The shipping and tariffs now make it pretty much impossible to do that. But a lot of bookstores, our website is completely searchable, as Abby knows. Is completely searchable like Amazon's website. We can pretty much get almost any book in print, and it's hooked right up to Ingram's warehouse, Ingram's database. So if it's at Ingram, I can get it usually if it's in print.
Well, and the internet has shrank our community in a way that, I mean, we're all three friends here, and we're three different, we're scattered across the U.S. and.
But I've hugged Terry and you haven't.
Yet. Whatever, Abby. But if my point is, if you find a local bookseller who is an expert and who really gets you, there's no reason that you can't befriend them and order from them, even if they're in Iowa and you're in the deep South. The internet has closed the gap for us all.
Well,
and Bookshop has played an important role too in all this. I mean, of all the times to open a business, I mean, we opened our bookstore in 2020, but bookshop.org, Andy Hunter started that as a direct competitor to Amazon, and in all the blessings in the world, they sold their first book in January of 2020, and then the world shut down.
Oh, wow.
And so, but because of that, people were looking for alternates, right? They were looking for alternate sources to try to figure out how to support local. Bookshop.org, a part of their mission is that a portion of every purchase goes back to independent bookstores. So to date, as of like 2 weeks ago, over the last 5 years, they've raised $40 million for independent bookstores.
Wow.
Amazing.
And they are able, because it is a larger business, right? They are able to sell books at a slight discount. So that's been a good thing too. So if you don't have an independent bookstore, you don't know who to support. You have a lot of choices. Bookshop.org is a great alternate to get books, ebooks and physical books that are not Amazon. And if like I said, if your book is available via Ingram that wide distribution, it likely will be listed there as well. And Libro.fm also works with indie authors for audiobooks. So they have a whole page on their website for how to get your book listed there. And once again, a portion of their profits go back to indie bookstores as well. And as I tell people, you actually, when you buy a book from Libro.fm, you own those files. So if Libro.fm, God forbid, would ever go away, you still own those files, and you can put them on any device. If you want to burn a CD and listen to CDs in an audiobook on CD in your car, you can. If you want to put it on a
8-track,
a cell phone you aren't using anymore for your kids, you can do that. So that's the neat thing about Libro.fm too, and they work with indie authors as well.
And maybe you've got a 72 El Camino and you want to burn them to 8 tracks.
That, I mean,
we're not here to judge. Whatever,
I used to have a device before when, smartphones first came out, and you have a lot of space on them when you weren't carrying around a hard drive in your pocket, essentially, a very large terabyte, multiple terabytes in your pocket. I actually always kept one of my old cell phones that had all my audiobooks on it. So it wasn't junking up the space I needed from my phone for pictures and apps. I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Amazing. Well, I have one final question for you. And, as someone who has her pulse on the publishing and the book buying industry right now, what are some of the biggest trends that you're seeing maybe this year? Are people gravitating toward one genre? Is anything piquing people's interest that you have noticed?
stained edges. I feel like that's everybody's looking for something pretty unique or special about a book. Those seem to always catch people's eyes. I don't even know.
Yeah, this was the stained edge one that I haven't even opened it, but I'm keeping it right here on my desk because I love this purple. Oh, look at that. What's that one?
This is the Fairy Loot edition of Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab that came out last month. They went
I'm listening to that book right now, and one of my all-time favorite books before that was The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue.
See how many copies of Addie LaRue I have back here?
Incredible book. It's one of my all-time favorites.
For us in our store, because every store is going to be different, so people are still gravitating towards World War II historical fiction. For me, reading anything set in World War II, it kind of provides me hope for what's happening in our world right now. As we went through it once, we survived. It was horrible. We survived because we came together as communities in small groups to get through it. So I think that's why I keep gravitating towards it. People usually when they come into our store are looking to get out of a rut. Like they're looking for something they haven't tried or read before. And I love recommending, I haven't thought of what to call this yet, but there is in our store, at least, there's a trend towards comedic, like suspense thrillers, mysteries. So if you've read the Finlay Donovan series by Al Cosimano, if you've read Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by Benjamin Stevenson, I think probably the Thursday Murder Club might fit in that. It's more on the humorous side. You can't call them suspense thrillers straight up, I don't feel, because they're not dark enough. There's a lot of laugh out loud moments.
But darker than cozy.
Yes, because there's dead bodies.
Yes.
So it's all dark humor.
You don't see dead bodies in cozy mystery.
Yeah. I think Thursday Murder Club is a perfect illustration of that because it's not squeaky clean, but it's not gruesome.
No,
but it's just, it kind of it straddles that line somewhere where, what's the Hulu show, Only Murders in the Building?
Oh yes,
yeah.
Very much like Only Murders in the Building or Knives Out.
Or Knives Out. Perfect.
That is the type of book that we've been able, we have a lot of those on our shelf, and I finished one a few weeks ago that I had no idea how it was going to end, and it was absolutely hilarious. The Retirement Plan, it was so funny.
So anyone that, if you're trying to decide what to write and take it from a bookseller, what's selling right now, what are people interested in, and find a way to work some of that into your work.
Yeah. And see what kind of book clubs, if you do have a library, library or a independent bookstore or a bookstore near you that does book clubs, like see what's on their book club list. Snarky mysteries, I like that.
I like that too.
That works. Snarky mysteries, I like it.
Great.
Because you can kind of see what people are interested in that in your community. Or if you're lucky enough, there are several bookstores, including ours, that have what we call a no assigned reading book club. And so basically you just come and you give mini book reviews, and so you get to get exposed to what everybody likes to read. And it can be anything. We have a gentleman that only reads nonfiction, for example. There's a gentleman that he tends to read a lot of horror. So, and there's people that only read romance. So it's been a lot of fun because it kind of gets you, those kind of book clubs kind of get you out of your rut, and somebody else raving about a book. It doesn't necessarily have to be a bookseller. It could be the person sitting across the room from you will get you to try something that you've never tried before.
I thought of one more question. Do you have time for one more question?
Yes.
Do you sell, do you have a big fantasy section? Do you sell a lot of fantasy at your store?
Here's the interesting thing about our store.
Okay.
Is that we only have what I call high level genres.
Okay.
So we do fiction, nonfiction for adults.
Okay.
We do YA for your teenagers. We have our middle grade and graphic novels.
Okay.
We have our chapter books for those that are, like 50 to 100 pages that are highly illustrated.
Sure.
We have our board books and our picture books.
Okay.
And as a science fiction fantasy reader myself, I love the way our store is arranged because there isn't the stereotyping or the maybe the looking down at somebody because they read science fiction and fantasy. And I have been able to I've been able to recommend science and fiction and fantasy books to people that say they don't read science fiction and fantasy, because I'm just going to the fiction section and I'm pulling that book off the shelf. So I just had, this actually happened last week. I'd been raving about the Lady Astronaut series by Mary Robinette Kowal, the 4th book, and that just came out. I love it. Alternate history, space race, 50s and 60s. Women are the head of it. If you liked Hidden Figures, it's amazing. And I haven't been able to get anybody to read it. And a customer pick it up finally, that I give her a lot of recommendations. We talk about books a lot when she comes in. Her whole family, they're all readers. And they went on vacation. And before they went on vacation, she came and got the second 2 books because she said, Terri, this reads like a TV show. And I'm like, I know, right? Yeah. And it has everything that she likes. The women's history, the science and math. There's a little bit of mystery in there. The historical aspect and political struggles and all that is in there. But it's science fiction. But she's like, I love it. She loved every single book. And so sometimes it's just getting out of that sometimes genre can pigeonhole you. Mm-hmm. So finding how to sell it. I've been very good at figuring out how to sell some of those books that would be going to Barnes & Noble, even science fiction fantasy in a general fantasy or in a general fiction section.
So I
don't know if that answers your question or not.
Well, my specific question was going to be, is romantasy killing like epic fantasy? Like,
I don't think so. My sister reads more epic fantasy than I do. I'm more of the fantasy set in our world, like magical realism.
Sure. Yeah.
My brain kind of breaks when it's a whole world with its whole, and its own language and own customs.
Yeah.
But she and I, in the light of Iron Flame, we've both, of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, we've both read that. And the way she explained it to me, and it makes perfect sense, is that if you like your fantasy with a lot of romance and you don't really care about the world building, romantasy is probably where you want to be. If you like world building and you want a lot of political struggle and maybe, not a lot of romance, it's possible that books like that are being billed as romantasy are not going to be your cup of tea. Because my sister, for her, she really thrives on the world building. She loves all those layers and how it all fits together. Yeah. And so I think you can get a balance. I think there are probably books out there that put that together really well. But I will say the ones that I've encountered recently in the wake of Fourth Wing they don't fulfill, I don't think, the epic fantasy world building as well as some of your more traditional ones.
Yeah. I think a lot of times in publishing, we'll see where the pendulum swings all the way one way and then back and then, it'll kind of settle back down. So I've just heard from some people that are like big epic fantasy fans are like, well, there's just not a lot of new releases in our genre. And I just tell them, just be patient. This is an underserved population now, and they're finally getting more of what they love, and let them get what they love. It'll all come back, And
I think at that point too, where you start having conversations with your librarians, your other fellow readers, you start seeking out, looking at the indie published authors too, because sometimes you will be able to find exactly what you need. The publishing industry itself has decided we're going to back away from for whatever reason, because this other thing is selling. And also check to see because there's all these publishers. You got your big, 6 now, because Source Books is getting up there too, and the number of books they're selling every year. Mm-hmm. They all have different imprints underneath them. So I can tell you, Macmillan, for example, go look at Tor and Tor.com. You're going to find your more traditional science fiction and fantasy. Titan, I think, is an Ace, are under Penguin. Once again, more traditional. But if you're under Macmillan, if you look at Red Tower and Bramble, you're going to find your more romantic side of fantasy and science fiction over there. Right. So it can be too what imprints you're looking at and what you're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Terri, we could talk about books all day long. I don't, because that's Abby and I talk about books all day long most of the time. But thank you for joining us. Welcome. And if people, Swamp Fox Bookstore is your store.
Yes.
If they're looking for a great book curator that they can get in touch with, is there contact information on your site?
Yeah.
Like how would someone join your community?
Yeah. So if you go to swampfoxbookstore.com, is our website. We're Swamp Fox Bookstore on Instagram, Threads, and Facebook as well. We have a newsletter we send out semi-regular basis. I'm single person.
Regular.
So when I have some chance, I do send out newsletters. And on our website, let me look quick there is a For Authors page for those of you that are wondering. That has a lot of the information I shared today and some additional resources. But under our Buy Books link, there is a link to get a recommendation. So we provide free recommendations to people that are struggling with what to get, because we obviously don't have an algorithm on our site that says, oh, if you like this, you might like that. So that helps people get out of a rut as well.
Excellent. I just followed you on Instagram
Awesome.
and Facebook so that I can keep up with what's going on with you. Terri, thank you so much for taking time to join us today.
Yeah, thanks, Terri.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Everybody, thank you for joining us today. Join us tomorrow, Tuesday, for Writing Sprint Tuesdays. And on Wednesday, Wednesday and Thursday, we have Writing Sprints as well. And Wednesday, we're going to have author Nick Cole joining us to talk about communicating directly with your readers. And then Abby and I will do our Friday wrap up that we've been doing throughout the whole Indie Summer campaign. Thank you all for joining us. Terri and Abby, see you guys later.